Okay, welcome everybody to the Papillion La Vista Community Schools Board of Education meeting for October 14th, 2024. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Ms. Fisher?
Here.
Ms. Witt?
Here.
Ms. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Lotus?
Here.
Mr. Madler?
Here. Okay. Do we have a motion for Mr. Bailey?
I'll make a motion to excuse the absence of Mr. Bailey this evening.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion by Mr. Lotus and second by Ms. Wood to excuse the absence of Mr. Bailey. Roll call.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. I'd like to point everyone, we have the open meetings law posted at the entrance of the room. Moving on to Section 2, Communications, Item A, Recognition. We have some National Merit awardees tonight. Over to you.
Okay. Yes, good evening. There's a couple of students that we want to recognize tonight. I am representing Dr. Rickley. He is in the role of dad tonight. So I'm filling in, but we have two students that we'd like to recognize that were National Merit semifinalists. And what that means is, just to give you a little bit of perspective, when you take the ACT or the SAT, it can be either one of those normed reference assessments, and you are in the top 0.5% in the state of Nebraska, you are deemed as a semifinalist. And we have two students, two monarchs that are with us tonight. That we would like to recognize that were noted to be semifinalists, and what that means is now they receive additional paperwork, basically, application that they apply for to be finalists, and we're very excited for them. So we would like to congratulate Nicholas Surwatoski and Eleanor Precker. And if you would come up and be recognized by your Board of Education.
Parents come on up if you want pictures.
Jason, come on up.
Yeah, come on up and get pictures.
All right, I'm going to just take, step that way.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Very good. Thank you.
Parents.
And then you want to do parents?
Nicholas, will do you first.
Congratulations, Mom. It is exciting.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Very good. And I'll email those. Congrats.
It's a great academic achievement.
Very excited.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Very good.
Congratulations. Okay.
All right, congratulations again. Moving on to item B, Student Council from Papillion La Vista South High School. We have Kinsey and Abigail. Welcome up.
Hello, I'm Kinsey Lathrop, and I'm the president of Student Council at Papio South.
And I'm Abigail Bender. I'm the vice president of Student Council at Papio South.
Thank you guys for having us tonight.
First of all, let's go to athletics at our school. We have been very busy with our activities this past quarter. Volleyball is currently the #1 team in the Class A, and we're having another fantastic season this year. Metro Volleyball is going to be hosted at both Monarchs and Titans, and we're going to host the championship games on Friday, October 25th. The districts will follow the next week and will be off to state on November 6th through the 9th.
So exciting. And then moving on to football, our boys have been working very hard and are coming off a win against Omaha South. Their current record is 3-4, but our schedule has been very challenging this year with the second toughest schedule in Class A, which I didn't know, but seems pretty tough. But our boys still continue to raise the bar.
And softball, our girls have been very successful in their regular season. Their great work ethic followed them through 2 districts. We beat Omaha South to compete for a district championship, but we were brought to an end by the Elkhorn South softball team. In the end, though, the Titan softball team went 19-14 and was ranked 9th in the state.
Pretty impressive. And then our boys tennis competed in Metro Tennis this past week. Our boys team qualified for the dual championship in Kearney today. And then our state tennis takes place next week on Monday, October 21st and 22nd in Lincoln.
The girls' golf team has had a fun season, and they have been constantly raising the bar for us all. We had 2 girls qualify for state in Grand Island, which took place today on October 14th.
And then getting into cross country, the girls and the boys just competed in the Metros, which were hosted at Papio South. The girls had a strong showing and placed 3rd, and then the boys placed 2nd. And going into state, both boys and girls are ranked 5th, which is very exciting.
And then last on our sport activities list, the United Titans flag football team competed in a tournament at the Landing 2 weeks ago, and they earned 2 big wins.
Very exciting. And then into our fine arts, our band is one of the best in the state. We have had a very successful season. We just competed in Minneapolis. They conclude their marching season at state on October 26th, and they have a strong chance of bringing home a state championship.
Next, our theater department has already had a successful show. We had a Monster Calls, and now they're working hard on their upcoming show, which is a jukebox musical based on Elvis Presley called All Shook Up. It's a great cast, and it's going to be a great show. Elvis will be in the building from November 14th to the 17th.
And then we want to highlight our Hope Squad. Our Hope Squad is a club for mental health and suicide awareness. And a few weeks ago, or last week maybe, they helped raise money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention by participating in their Out of the Darkness walk. This was September 28th, but their work to raise awareness is far from over.
And now on to us, the Student Council. On September 13th, we put on our Senior Sunrise, which is an event to celebrate our seniors coming into their final year of high school. It was very fun, full of food trucks, coffee, music, and celebrating with friends.
And then we had a super successful homecoming week. Our homecoming was on September 14th, which was a little early, but it was nice weather, so that's great. Our Spirit Week was a success full of lots of participation from all grade levels. We had a bunch of fun Spirit Day themes. And then our dance theme was Festival of Lights, which is based off of Disney's Tangled, and it was gorgeous. And we're so proud of our council for coming together and completing that.
It looked awesome.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw it.
It looked amazing.
But yeah, next we're going to have our State Student Council on Saturday, October 26th in North Platte. We're going to fill up a bus of both Monarchs and Titans early in the morning
Yes.
and head there. We're going to connect with our other councils within the state of Nebraska, and we're going to grow all of our leadership abilities. It's going to be such a great time. I'm super excited.
Me too. And then that is all that we have for you today. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, that would be great. If not, that's okay too.
No,
Thanks.
great update. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Titans.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Have a good night. Okay, moving on to item D, The superintendent's report. We do not have any public comments for items not on the agenda. So item D, superintendent's report, Ms. Siri.
Yes, okay, so Dr. Rickley left me some notes. So the first thing is, it's hard to believe, but we are actually at the end of first quarter, so we are 25% through our school year. And a lot of our buildings have been having parent-teachers conferences to mark the end of that first quarter. And I know I've been in a couple of buildings, and we've had a really good turnout, and we appreciate that connection with family and the school district. The second thing is, Dr. Rickley wanted to send a special shout out and thanks to both principals, Jason Ryan, who happens to be here tonight, thank you, Mr. Ryan, and Jeff Spilker, who are our two high school principals, for they hosted Congressman Flood. He came and visited the schools last week, and I believe attended a couple of government classes and spoke to them and talked a little bit about the legislative process. Dr. Rickley also wanted to send a shout out to Governor Pillen has invited a few superintendents to meet in Lincoln. I believe that's actually tomorrow. Is that right, Mr. Richards? He and Mr. Richards will be traveling to Lincoln to discuss school finance. And then also congratulations to our own Val Fisher. She was recently for achieving NASB's Level 10 Award of Achievement. And I believe that has to do with participation in their services and programs as a school board member. So congratulations, Val. And then just a couple of things. Again, Dr. Rickley wanted to send out congratulations to Prairie Queen as they were just recently named the Unified Champion School. It's a first ever for a PLCS elementary to receive this recognition. And I believe last board meeting he mentioned it, and that actually happened between the two board meetings. And then the last thing is today was Professional Development Day. So our students got to have an extended weekend, but our staff participated in a lot of professional development, and there were just a lot of great things going on across the district. Of course, our buildings have PD that they are doing to help move their building goals forward. We had the PARA conference, of course, in which paras come and receive additional training, but we also had Marzano training for new teachers and all kinds of things that were happening. So it was a busy day, but a good day in the district, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Siri. Moving on to item E, board reports.
I just wanted to mention that I and a couple others on our board, Ms. Wood and Suanne, we all attended the Labor Relations Conference down in Lincoln, and it's always great because it has a lot of good reminders, but there are a lot of changes and differences this year as we're looking at doing our all of a sudden my mind is blank, our contract, with all our different groups. So there are some things we're going to have to pay some real close attention to. And overall, it was a great opportunity to meet with other board members, to have that opportunity to discuss what they're seeing in their districts, what we might be seeing in ours. So, but that's what I had to share in board reports.
I had some great opportunities since our last board meeting. I attended a liaison lunch at La Vista Middle School. And as you recall, at our last board meeting, we had a presentation on behavior. And during the liaison lunch at La Vista Middle School, they shared a lot of things that they are doing in the area of behavior. And of course, many were presented to us as district initiatives, but they've definitely, made sure that that's done very thoroughly within their building. But they also then have taken it forward and on their own are moving forward with restorative practices. They shared some examples of proactive measures that they're taking to try to identify kids before there is a behavior problem that might cause a disruption. And they were just feeling very positive about the efforts that they have made. Their staff is very involved and engaged, and they shared that they had a tailgate early on this school year and had raised $2,500 to use as a part of their behavior program from the staff working hard. But then in the area of academics, they also have done some things with some flex scheduling during their advisory time, and they're every 2 weeks switching and doing some creative, engaging activities for students during this time of extension and academic support. Again, they felt like the kids are really settling in and things are going very well. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to spend time with that staff. I also attended a Monarch softball game, which was so much fun. It happened to be senior night, and there were 4 seniors, and 3 of them hit home runs. So I thought that was quite exciting. And I also, you know how good Monarch softball is, but until you sit in the stands and look at all those banners and see how many state championships they have been involved in, they have to be one of the most dynamic dynasties in the state of Nebraska in any sport. It's quite amazing. I also attended the teammates board meeting, and they're working on their strategic plan, and so a great discussion was held at that meeting. And then finally today I was able to attend the para conference, and I just have to extend congratulations to Dr. Bell and his team for putting on this event. It was fun, it was celebratory, they had it set up and decorated in such a great fashion. They had engagement from the paras as they competed with decorating helmets and shirts and things. And then they also put forth a variety of sessions for the paras to attend. And as I walked around, you could see the Marzano training that was going on, the de-escalation training, and just so many things that our district is working on to see the para and food service personnel have the opportunity to also have that training was very powerful. So great job from Dr. Bell and his team to put that on today.
Okay, I attended the area membership and the labor relations meetings, and I had a liaison lunch at Anderson Grove, and that team was put together very well. They were very organized. They had a great agenda. I'm going to talk about first they had concerns and questions about personalized professional development credits, after-school child care for certified staff, mental health and the role of the counselors. They asked about adding counselors into the classrooms for teach time rather than just during specials. Staffing, what does staffing look like for the district for recruitment and retention? And so Dr. Settles was there, and she spent quite a lot of time explaining the processes that are in place in the district. Then they talked about their celebrations, and they had a lot of celebrations. The MTSS process, they talked about student problem-solving team that they're using, elementary plan days, and the collaboration among staff for getting the CPI, new teachers, kindergarten, and other special meetings so that they can all work together. They're a Purple Star school. They talked about putting together a toolbox so that other schools might be able to apply to become a Purple Star, which means that they're military supported. They have a lot of clubs. They have 10-plus clubs, including Battle of the Books, Girls Books, Boys Book Club, social game clubs. They serve a drama club, yearbook club, Anderson Grove Unified Sports Club, which they're trying to model for other elementary schools. Grover on the Go is one of my special favorites. They have, their penguin is named Grover. He's their mascot. And the kids who have special education time also deliver the treats to everybody on certain days of the week. They have a student council, and they just are bragged about how many of their teachers are involved in these commitments to students and outside of school activities. So I give them kudos for all of that extra work. Let's see, what else did I do? Oh, and I attended the Papillion La Vista High School Monarchs football game on Friday against the Eagles. We didn't win that game, but everybody was in pink for Cancer Awareness Week, and it was wonderful to see them all out there working their hearts out to win that game, but they didn't, sadly.
I, like many, attended the local area meeting, and then just numerous other activities. A big thanks to all of the staff and teachers and everything for hosting conferences. Had a wonderful night of conferences at Ashbury. Just great how they, again, the additional time, the initial one-on-one insight with the teachers on the progress for first quarter was fantastic. So big thanks to that, because I know those are some long days for all the folks. Attended numerous different school activities, but the one I wanted to highlight happened this last Saturday afternoon, which is kind of special for our district, that we have hosted the middle school state cross-country meet since its inception. And it's just amazing to see the number of student athletes out there competing from across the state. I mean, it was, our own local middle school teams all the way to Gothenburg and everywhere in between. Huge races. The weather was a little toasty for this time of year, but it's okay. But a huge thanks to the cross-country teams and the coaches for organizing that and having it run so smoothly. So it's a pretty cool event. If you get a chance, check it out next year.
All right, moving on to item F, the committee reports, buildings, grounds, and finance.
Yes, we did meet on Friday, October 4th. We've got a few items, I think, on tonight's agenda that we discussed. Yes, we do. We went over some project updates, things that are either in progress or things that will soon be up for discussion here in a board meeting. We talked about kind of 4 additional irrigation projects that will be on a future agenda. The district audit is wrapping up, and so that will be on an agenda item once that is finalized. We talked over some of our legislative priorities for the upcoming 2025 legislative unicameral session, and some other miscellaneous topics that, if moved further along, will show up on a future board agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lotus. Human resources and student services.
Our last meeting was on September 16th. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight that were discussed during that meeting. They include the option enrollment resolution and the personnel issue, item E on the agenda. Our next meeting is October 21st.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Witt. Curriculum and Americanism.
Thank you. We did meet on Monday, September 30th, here in the central office. We had quite a few topics on here. One was our BOE Policy 6405, book reconsideration update, and we just kind of looked at where we are in the process and what we have still outstanding to look at. We also talked about academic performance data for 2023 and 2024, but it continues to be embargoed until notice from NDE. So as much as we'd love to share it with everybody, we don't have the flexibility to do that. We are working on title allocation again this year, and the learning community, there is a potential. We may see some funds from the learning community, so more to come on that as we move on through the fall. And then we did have quite a bit of conversation about the summary for the ideal program review. We've been talking about the ideal program for some time now, and it has almost come to fruition. We're almost done. So more to come on that as we move forward. You will see that on the agenda, and I believe that's all we had for our meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fisher. And Ms. Siri, when does the embargo on that NDE data end?
So it'll be towards the end of November, and we'll do our annual report for the board.
Right,
at that
perfect.
time.
Thank you. Moving on to Section 3 action items. Item A, action by consent.
I'll make a motion to approve the action by consent as presented.
Second?
Okay, we have the motion by Ms. Fisher and a second by Mr. Lotus. Any discussion? No, roll call.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on to item B, property tax resolution. Mr. Richards, all you.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mandler. Good evening, Board. Tonight, we hopefully conclude our long process of the budget and tax asking for 24-25. We did have 2 tax hearings on this topic, one out of district, one in district. So we're asking the Board to approve $86,996,784 for the general fund at a tax rate of 91,0536 cents. And then $18,434,106 for the bond fund at a tax rate of 0.196369 cents. And $1.6 million for the building fund at a tax rate of 0.0167646 for a total levy of $1.12 and some change there, 3651, to support our operations budget for the 2024-25 school year. This represents a 2.6 cent reduction in our tax levy for this particular year. And the admin would recommend the tax resolution attached in your packet and the motion as well. I can answer any questions that you may have still lingering out there.
I'll make the motion to approve the attached tax request resolution for the 2024-25 school year as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion by Mr. Lotus and a second by Ms. Wood. Any discussion? Questions? No? Roll call.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item C, irrigation systems. Mr. Richards.
Thank you. Yes, we had talked about this at the last meeting, getting Golden Hills, Patriot Portal, and Walnut Creek on board with an irrigation system. We think we can do some of the work this fall with the plumbing side and then really tackle it early in the spring to finish it up. And if that changes, I'll let you know. But that's the plan at this point. Quality Irrigation was the lowest bid. They received the bid last fall as well for 6 of our schools last fall to do that at $132,646. That was on the lower end of our budget, so we're happy to see that as well. We had 2 other bids, one for $138,883 and another for $243,245. So we're pretty confident that Quality Irrigation will do a good job for us once again.
I'll make the motion to, 1, approve the lump sum bid of $132,646 from Quality Irrigation to install sprinkler systems at the 4 elementary schools listed above, and 2, delegates authority to and authorizes, approves, and directs the President of the Board of Education, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, or a designee for the school district to sign, execute, and deliver such construction contract, sign and approve any change order increases or decreases, retain necessary professionals for assistance, and take all other action necessary to complete any requirements or obligations under the construction project and contract.
Second.
Okay, we have the motion by Mr. Lotus and a second by Ms. Swit. Questions, discussion?
I just had one question,
Sure.
and that's, having looked through this multiple times, were there any concerns on any of these pieces of property that you had, or should this be a fairly straightforward install with no issues?
Yeah, this should be pretty straightforward. The Reha engineers kind of does the plans for these. So we have a qualified engineer that kind of does the plans before it goes out for bid, and they're the ones that did it for us last fall as well. So qualified individuals, making sure that we're kind of covered and making sure we're not running into any problems at any of these sites. So great question.
All right, thank you.
And I assume you said they, Quality Irrigation won the bids and worked on some of the elementary schools last year. I assume we were pleased with the work that they
Yes.
did. Yeah,
Yep. Real
And-
responsive company, and they did a great job for us.
perfect. And after these four, where does that put us in our work to get the irrigation systems at all the schools?
Yeah, once we, we have a few left on the bond that are part of their projects that we'll do some irrigation work with, like Papillion Middle is an example. And La Vista Middle is another example that do not have irrigation on any of their sites. So that'll be included. And once we have the bond projects done, we will be, all our schools will have irrigation in the front areas of our school campuses.
And can you remind us why we're putting the irrigation systems at the schools?
Sure. Yeah, we have a lot of, we're in neighborhoods, our schools, and we want to be good neighbors. And a lot of times, one of the first things I saw when you guys hired me over 3 years ago was, the sites didn't really match some of the neighborhoods sometimes where we got a lot of weeds and, dead grass in our sites because if it's not raining, we don't get any water to that grass or to support the growth of grass. So we just want to be good neighbors. Have good-looking campuses on our school districts. That's the main reason for this.
Perfect. Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, so we have the motion by Mr. Lotus and a second by Ms. Witt. Roll call.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Moving on to item D, option enrollment resolution. Dr. Steele, welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. This was discussed at the previous meeting, but we're talking about option enrollment. This is under Nebraska law, a process wherein a student who lives outside of the district, who resides outside of the district, can apply to enroll and attend school inside the district while still residing outside. Under Nebraska law, it authorizes boards of education on or before October 15th to declare buildings, classes to be at capacity in a programmatic sense. And so the resolution before you states that at this point in time, we would declare Ashbury and Prairie Queen Elementary to be in a programmatic sense to be at capacity. So those buildings would be closed for option enrollments for the 25-26 school year. However, the resolution also states that the district reserves the right to determine numeric capacities for individual classes, for buildings, grade levels at a later time, and we will do so, and when we do so, we will communicate that as part of our in-district transfer process and also the option enrollment process that will occur in the spring. Are there any questions regarding this?
Any questions for Dr. Steele?
I make a motion to approve the option enrollment resolution for the 2025-26 school year.
Second?
We have the motion by Ms. Swit and a second by Ms. Fisher. Any discussion? No? Roll call.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Moving on to item E, act on resignations submitted by Megan Niebel and Wesley Vance. Dr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you are considering an action to deny the request for release of contract for Ms. Megan Niebel and Mr. Wesley Vance. Both of these individuals have been certified staff of the Papillion La Vista Community Schools. Last spring, both signed a contractual agreement for the 24-25 school year, for this school year. Both employees, however, submitted a resignation during the first quarter of this school year. The actions of these teachers constitute an abrogation of their contractual duties. This negatively impacts students who have to transition to a new teacher. It negatively impacts colleagues who must help cover for the employees who left, and it presents challenges for trying to find new staff at an unusual point of the school year. We therefore request that you deny the release of contract for Ms. Niebel and Mr. Vance. I'll yield to any questions.
I'll make the motion to deny the request for release of contract for Megan Nebel and Wesley Vance for the reason of not fulfilling contractual obligations.
Second.
We have the motion by Ms. Witt and the second by Ms. Wood. Any questions, discussion?
Dr. Steele, can you just give a quick summary of, we don't see this very often. It's pretty rare to have that because we do offer opportunities before the new school year starts for them to ask for a release from their contract. Is that correct?
That's exactly right, Ms. Fisher. We do offer those opportunities, and there is a period of time to be sure that even after they have signed their contract for the next following year, that if we can find suitable replacement, we will release them from their contract. We'll bring that to the board. So yes, there is opportunity to do that. This is highly unusual for something like this to be occurring at this point of the year.
And I think you covered some really good points about the challenges, one, finding a new teacher, then getting them acclimated with their students and whatever it is they're teaching. And then, just the stress it puts on colleagues who are now covering to help us get through that time before we can find someone. So I appreciate the very conclusive information you've provided to help us with this decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? No? So we have the motion by Ms. Witt and the second by Ms. Wood. Roll call.
Ms. Witt?
Yes.
Ms. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Lotus?
Yes.
Mr. Madler?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Steele.
Thank you.
Moving on to Section 4, discussion information items. Item A, DA Davidson bond financing update. Mr. Richards.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Madler. Last fall, we went out for our first installment of $25 million of our $129.9 million bond that we brought into the district to start our construction projects. This fall, we're starting to get a little short on funds out of that $25 million and need to dip into some more of that $129.9 million. And Cody Wickham from DA Davidson is with our public finance company representative, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about tonight. We're going to ask for, looks like $35 million of bonds at this particular time, because we do have a lot of projects that are either ongoing, and then we're starting some anew, this winter and early next spring as well. So I'll let him kind of give you an update on what that might look like for us.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. This is just kind of, I guess, step one in the process that the district goes through, I think mainly for transparency purposes, to just discuss a potential financing coming up. And then if everyone wants to move forward, we'll come back later in the month at your next meeting with a resolution to authorize the next sale of bonds. When we first kind of structured out the $129 million, we really did it in its most rudimentary form, where we just had $25 million a year for the next 5 years with 29 on the last year. We were conservative with all our projections, allowing for flexibility. We realized that construction drawdown schedules are always changing and that you need to have some flexibility without disrupting your overall bond levy. So the information that you have in front of you tonight is just really our new model, where we projected out $35 million for this year. So we're accelerating an additional $10 million off of our original schedule, but also just demonstrating to the board and the public that we're still going to exceed our expectations in terms of a total bond levy. So that spreadsheet that you have in front of you, you can see, I think the most important figures are on the far right. Starting in calendar year 2025 with the total bond levy below 20 cents. And once you get out to 2029, when the final tranche of bonds are sold, you start to see that dip from 19.4 on down to 17.8, and then it steadily gets lower on as the years go out, which not only, again, is a lower bond levy than what was projected when you went out and asked the public to vote for these bonds, but it allows for future growth should you need to have a bond issue in the future as well. We've we've calculated for those gaps to where you could potentially do something in the future and not have to raise taxes in terms of bond levy. So I think our plan is well on track. This next tranche of bonds, timing's better than the last one. We just recently saw a 50 basis point drop at the September Fed meeting. We're expecting, well, as of right now, the Fed funds rate future for the November meeting is expected an 88% chance of another 25 basis point cut. So between now and when we're actually in the bond market, we've got some housekeeping items. Mr. Richards and I will have to have another ratings call with Moody's. And then obviously we would have the resolution for your consideration later in the month. So we'd probably be looking at hitting the market in mid-November, maybe early December, and hopefully between now and then we have another cut in interest rates and things look even a little better.
Thank you, Cody. Any questions, comments?
Just a comment. So just appreciate the partnership between the district and DA Davidson, and just in the planning and the structuring of how we were projecting to the public of being transparent and what our goal was to keep the levy flat or the same or reduced, and we're sticking to that, and then again allowing the flexibility for, as we've had good weather, to advance some of these projects a little sooner. Then obviously we need more money sooner. So again, just really appreciate the partnership and the strategic thinking and planning that goes into making sure we're doing what's best for our taxpayers and our district projects. Thank you.
Well, thank you. The feeling's mutual for sure. And one other thing I should point out, why you see that aggregate bond levy kind of waterfalling maybe quicker than usual is you've also, the board was very proactive and took advantage of the tender offer refunding that we completed earlier this year. That saved a few $100,000 and helped to lower the total principal outstanding. So I think you all should be applauded for your action on that transaction. That had we waited much longer, those opportunities have gone to the wayside now with the movement in rates. So that was a good transaction for the board and for the district and the taxpayers.
And Mr. Richards, I think this would get us to almost half of the total bond ask, this 35, because we did the 25
close,
last
yeah.
year, right? Yep. So you'd be.
We'll probably be looking at, coming back next fall again.
Okay.
And probably that $40 to $45 million range, since we're trying to get this, a lot of these projects done within that 4-year period by the end of the summer of '27.
Gotcha. So you think this should get us through next fall?
Yes.
Before we have to come back? Okay.
If it doesn't, if we're moving on some
move up.
projects quicker, we'll come back earlier to you in the summer
Yep.
to get that extra dollars to keep moving.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Richards or Cody? Nope. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on to item B, the staff survey data. Dr. Villarreal. Closing us out again. 2 meetings in a row.
All right. Good evening, Board of Education. I am here for my encore presentation. Following it up, last time we spent a bit of time talking about our parent-guardian survey data, and so now I'm bringing to you the staff survey data, and I'll point out some insights as we go through in where I think there's some good corroboration between what we saw in the parent-guardian survey data and what we see in this parent survey data, staff survey data. So before we jump in again, same information I shared last time, but in a different context now. This survey was administered in April of 2024. So at the end of last school year, and even though it feels like we're far removed from that now, we did have that data as we were planning and working with our building staffs to develop goals and make plans for the upcoming school year. So this data did get put to use. And looking at the responses from this, we had a total number of 734 responses from staff members, pretty well distributed between elementary and secondary schools. I did go back and check last year what our response rate was. And this is one of those things that I'd love to put a positive spin on, but I don't quite know how to. Last year we had 1,244 staff respondents, and this year we had 734. So we saw a significant drop there. I looked back continually a couple more years, and that number has been declining for the last 5 years. So it's something that we talked about before with our survey and engagement tools and how we can better work with our staff and our families to get information and input from them in a more timely manner. And that's something that we are actively working on right now to increase that engagement and increase those opportunities for staff input. Another way to look at that breakdown is by staff group. So we had 512 certified staff members, which includes teachers and administrators who hold their certification, and classified staff members who are then broken down by their subcategories on the screen there to the right. So again, good representation across the board among certified staff members and classified staff members. Our largest classified group that responded to the survey being our paraprofessionals. And similar to the parent guardian survey, we start with communication data. So some areas where they're getting their information, what they'd like more information about, and how they're sharing information. So starting with those sources of information, we asked them to tell us, we gave them a list of information sources and asked them to tell us which of those they get a good amount of their information from, a lot of their information from, or very little information. And these were the top 5 information sources among our staff. Similar to what we saw with our families, newsletters are at the top of the list. So the district newsletter is called the Morning Minute. That goes out every Wednesday to our staff members and provides them with updates from directors and other central office staff members. School newsletters is number 2. So our principals send out staff school newsletters to their staff members as well as their families. And that's where they get a lot of their information from. I do want to take a quick minute to talk about number 4, the Rickley Recap. That is Dr. Rickley's newsletter that goes out to staff. And this year, we actually had some really good conversations around the Rickley Recap, and that newsletter is going out to families this year as well. It is a newsletter that Dr. Rickley puts out, and it's essentially, this is what I've done. Last year it was monthly, so this is what I've done this month, and gives people that perspective on what the superintendent is up to. When he and I reviewed that, we saw that it really was a good information source, and there wasn't anything in there that we felt couldn't be shared with the community. So this year we've increased that distribution to every other week instead of once a month, and it goes out to staff and to families now. So families are also getting that inside look at what Dr. Rickley is up to. We asked them the same question about what they would like more information on, and we talked about this a little bit with the parent guardians. Number 1 was the legislative updates. We were in a legislative session at the time, so it was front of mind for people, but we have started including some of that information when relevant in the staff newsletter from Mr. Richards. Number 2 is curriculum updates. So I know that I've been talking to Miss Siri and her team about making sure that we're communicating that, and her team does a really great job of putting that information out there. It's also front of mind because of the ELA transition. At the end of last year, I think there was a little bit of hesitation on what the rollout was going to look like, so people were wanting to make sure they had the information they needed. And as I said, Ms. Siri and her team did a really great job of communicating that information at the start of the school year. Safety and security updates, budget updates, and strategic plan updates. Those are all areas that we've been working on doing our best to include in that Rickley Recap that goes out. So working with Dr. Rickley on providing updates to the staff and the community about those 3 areas. They're all somewhat intertwined there, with safety and security being a large part of our bond, which is associated with budget, and then strategic planning we will engage in starting in January. So that is what they were looking for more information on. And then we asked them, how are you communicating with families. And this is where I think there is some good corroboration of data between the parent guardian survey and the staff survey. If you remember in the parent guardian survey, they noted that at the elementary level, newsletters is where they get their information. And so you'll see at the elementary level here, newsletter was the number 2 method for communication. I think our teachers were thinking a little bit more individually when they put email as number 1. So if I'm communicating with a parent, I'm going to email them first. So that's where I think email was number 1, but that group communication through classroom team newsletters being number 2 was nice to see, because that's where parents are getting their information from at the elementary level. Then, if you recall, at the secondary levels, our parents and guardians indicated that they were getting their information from the app or the parent portal. And so here we see at the middle and high schools that that's the way our teachers are communicating with our families, is through the app or through the parent portal. So some consistency in data there. After looking at those communication methods, we moved on to climate data. And I'll give my same disclaimer that I gave last time. When you're looking at climate data, that is perception data. And that's not to discount the data, because I'm a believer that when you are hearing people's perceptions, that is their reality, that is their truth. And so if you tell me you feel a certain way, and I tell you that's the wrong way to feel, that's not going to change your mind. So this is how people are feeling, whether it's accurate or not. We take this information so we can plan around and make sure that we can give what our staff members need to change the way that they're feeling in our school district. And again, looking at this data, we will look at historical data as well, focusing primarily on trend lines to see where we're improving in areas and where we might be seeing some decline. The first one is continued employment. So asking everyone what their plans are for the next 2 to 3 years in the district. And you'll see that we did see an increase between 22-23 and 23-24 for the number of respondents who said that they plan to stay in their same type of position. And you'll see some data here coming up a little bit about retention and recognition that I think factors into that a little bit. Consistency in the number of folks that are retiring, a small drop in the number of people planning to change districts, a small drop in the number of people planning to advance to another position in education, and consistency in the percentage of people planning to leave the profession. So our first category for that perception data is district perceptions, looking at the district brand and looking at our mission and beliefs. We've seen an increase in both of those numbers when you're looking at the trend lines. And I know that in the past, the communications department under Annette Iman did a lot of work to make sure that people understood what our district is meant to be known for. Be known for greatness started popping up everywhere, and it really has resonated with our staff. So they are responding positively about those perceptions there. Looking next at job satisfaction. So we see some changing in data here, but mostly consistent. If you look at those peaks that came in 22-23 and drop those out, then you've got pretty consistent numbers across the board. Where our most notable area is that PLCS recognizes and appreciates me as an employee. So again, going back to that data point where more people say they plan to stay in their positions, we jumped from 50% of people believing that PLCS recognizes and appreciates them as an employee in 21-22 to 62% in 23-24. So that's a great jump in that data. And there'll be some more data here further in the presentation that I think factors into that as well. Next, looking at communication and understanding, fairly consistent data here as well. The most notable jump in trendline data there is employees are given opportunities to provide input. So we went from 44% there to 62%, and that is a significant increase where we have done a better job of working with our staff and notifying them of things that are coming up and truly listening when we're asking for their input on things, and that's reflected in the data. As you all know, the board mental health was a big part of our last strategic plan, which would have been over the course of the last 3 years of historical data points here. And so we see consistent upward trend lines in all 3 areas. The one at the top is an awareness of what mental health resources are available to them, and the 2 lines that are fairly close to each other toward the middle of the range there is whether or not people feel like their mental health is valued and there's mental health supports in place for students. So seeing a positive increase there, but it's something that I think we can work to close the gap on between people knowing that resources are available and people feeling like they're encouraged to use those resources or guided to use those resources in more meaningful ways for both our students and our staff. The next set of questions asks about administration. So at the school level, administration would refer to principals and assistant principals. At the district level, that would be central office staff. So asking about how they feel about their administrators, primarily seeing upward trend lines in all of these areas, which is great. I know that our administration as a whole has been working on visibility and being more present in their schools and being more available for both staff and families. And so I think that's something that we see reflected here in this data. And then I mentioned before that there were more data points that I think play into people feeling recognized as employees and feeling like they want to stay in their current work. So we had 3 data points for recognition that we've tracked. The recognition and retention stipends were only tracked in 22-23 and 23-24 because those were the years where they were in place. And so you'll see that those had a pretty high level of agreement among staff as far as feeling recognized through those stipends and feeling like their work is valued. The other 2 are PLCS Pick Me Up program, which is something the communications department does to provide little treats throughout the year for the staff to just feel recognized and feel supported. That program has grown significantly over the last 2 years, and so you'll see in the data that has jumped, I think, in recognition. And then the gratitude program this year has gotten quite a bit of an increase. It's now called Moments That Matter, but the gratitude program is our online portal where anyone can submit a note of gratitude for a staff member in the district. And we made some changes to that prior to this last year to make that program more visible, which included printing greeting cards for staff members who receive those and delivering those greeting cards to the staff members. And I think some of those small changes helped increase the feelings of recognition among that as well. So the good news is we're making some positive changes in our staff and how they are feeling as far as recognition goes. And then the last set of data points that I'll share with you is our qualitative data. Like the last time, I've included an N number of responses because sometimes it feels like our qualitative data is the loudest, but we have to remember that it's a small group of people making the most noise on both ends, whether it's strengths or areas for improvement. So starting with those strengths, we had 269 responses about what the district is doing well. The number 1 response was staff appreciation and recognition, which I think is well reflected in the quantitative data. Number 2 is supporting and caring staff, administration, and colleagues. Number 3 is a focus on student success. Number 4 is curriculum updates and toolbox processes. And number 5 is communication from the district and within buildings. We also ask them for how we can improve as a district. We had 318 responses to that prompt. The number 1 response there was teacher retention and compensation. And so specifically, they noted concerns about burnout, desire for better compensation and benefits, and desire for more recognition and support for veteran teachers. And I know that that is a collection of data that Dr. Settles and her team have looked very closely at and are taking with them as they work through this year. Number 2 is student behavior and discipline. So we had 60 respondents who noted that that should be an area for improvement. And You all saw the presentation from Dr. Voisin and Dr. Anderson at the last board meeting that shared all of the ways which we're working to address student behavior in a positive way. And the number 3 area for improvement was staffing and support. That focuses primarily on those areas of shortage like instructional paraprofessionals. So what can we do to help increase the recruitment for those staff members and retention of those staff members? And I think a couple of you mentioned the paraprofessional conference in your remarks. I think that's one of the events we do twice a year that really does help celebrate those staff members and help them feel valued, because we're investing our time and energy into helping them to improve. The next steps is, we talked about this a little bit, there are things that are already in progress, but establishing measurable goals for key improvement areas, working with key stakeholders to develop those action plans, and then providing regular progress to the community and gathering ongoing feedback. So we are working on that. In some cases, plans are already in motion, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you some updates on that in the near future. And then in other areas, we're still working on developing plans. So that is the staff data, and now I'll take any questions.
I don't have a question, but as a parent, I can confirm that the communication data that you presented is how I rely on communications. The one-way communication with the newsletters and such are very helpful, but most helpful to me is the email, where if I have a direct question, I get an immediate response, and teachers have been extremely reactive whenever I needed there. So thank you for that.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, I think it just validated, what we're hearing in all the liaison luncheons and all our other interactions with staff throughout the district. So I was glad that it validated it, and we didn't have something come out of left field that we weren't already proactively getting involved in. So that was good to see.
Dr. Villarreal, thank you for sharing the data. I know we talked about the parent data a few weeks ago, but now that this was your first go at the staff data, because you started last January, February, what changes are you brainstorming to this process moving forward?
One of the things that we're looking at is collecting staff data more frequently. So instead of doing a one-time survey at the end of the year, finding those points throughout the year where we really need their input and really need their feedback on specific topics, and then soliciting at those times. I think when you survey or ask for input or feedback with intention, then people see that and your response rates will be higher. So that's what we're looking at right now, is finding a vehicle to use to collect that information in a more timely fashion and more frequently.
And during the parent guardian survey, you said that it is broken out by school and the principals get the information, I think typically right at the beginning of the summer or right at the end of the school year. And that is the same for the staff survey as well. Can you walk through what the process is then of what the building principals do within just their data?
Yeah, that's a great question, a great prompt. So at the conclusion of the survey, we do the same thing we do with the parent guardian survey, where we separate the data out by building. We also separate it out by department at the district level. So the assistant superintendents receive the information for everyone who reports to them, or the departments that report to them. So everybody's getting feedback that's specifically relevant to their department. Then that information is distributed to them at the beginning of the summer. So they have the opportunity to reflect on that, work with their building leadership teams, and come up with goals for the upcoming school year related to the data that they receive. So very similar in process to the parent guardian data.
And yeah, I like the idea of more frequent check-ins. Hopefully that it doesn't take the staff long to do, but some quick provide information so that we're able to get it and then potentially action on it even sooner. I am pleased on a lot of the trends of those numbers going in the right direction. A couple outliers that did not move upward, but the one thing that I think yeah, we really need to think through is the 734 respondents compared to the, what, I think 1,200 last time. I mean, it either is you have more people content and just, I'm content and I'm not going to share, or they don't think that anything is going to be done with the data, which is what you don't want. So I think we really got to show that we are actioning off of it, we're looking at it, the principals are using it, the administration is using it, we're coming up with solutions and ideas to help some of their pain points, because I mean, what you don't want is that number to keep dropping, and then you just don't have a good representation of the actual, of the staff. So yeah, hopefully we can get that number turned around, and with some of the ideas that you have, that should, we'd see that number higher next time.
Yeah, you mentioned making sure that the data is actionable, and that's something that's really important to me and that I'm also working on as we develop a new strategy for collecting that information, is again, being very intentional with it and not asking questions that we're not currently ready to take action on. Because one of the things that is great about the current method of data collection is that we've consistently asked the same set of questions for years and years and years. So we can see those historical trend lines, which is helpful to an extent. It's not the most actionable data because there are a significant number of items in that survey, and as a district, we can't work on all of them at the same time. So being more discerning about what we're asking for input and feedback on and being prepared to take action is going to be really valuable. And I think that will tie in really well with our upcoming strategic planning process, as well as keeping updates on that moving through the next 5-year cycle.
So do you see that you'll need to move forward differently with the parent survey and the staff survey? Like if you're giving multiple or more frequent staff surveys, potentially maybe you would keep with an annual survey for parents, or do you plan to address them the same way, or what's your plan between the two?
I would like to increase the number of opportunities for parents to provide input and feedback as well and be more intentional there. I think in reading through all of the open-ended comments, there are several that mention they don't feel like anything is done with that survey data, and I can understand where they have that perception because they might not see the action taking place, and they're also filling out the survey from a very egocentric point of view and focusing specifically on the experience of their students and not necessarily the experience at the district level. So again, just being more intentional about the questions that we're asking, what we're asking about, and what we're collecting feedback on to make sure that we can take action on it moving forward. So hopefully we would increase the volume of input and feedback opportunities, but reduce the number of items that they're seeing.
And then how would you communicate that back with parents? Would you use something like the Rickley recap or another one of those tools to share feedback or responses?
I think that's a great prompt. One of the things that we've talked about is including that in one of the newsletters. There are 2 newsletters that go out to our families. There's the Greatness Update, which is from the district, and then the Rickley Recap, which is from Dr. Rickley. I also think, and Mr. Madler mentioned this last time, I think giving updates to the board, if we start doing those quick surveys, then just taking 5-10 minutes in a board meeting and saying, this is what we asked for input and feedback on, this is what we heard, and this is what we're going to do about it, to keep everyone informed. And then, like you said, pushing that out in a public way. Some of the examples that I've seen in the research that I've been doing on this, they maintain a section on their website where people can go and look historically at those quick short surveys and what the responses looked like. And some districts even will include, these are our next 3 action steps related to this survey data. And I really like some of those models because it's very transparent and very clear what's happening with the data.
Well, thank you for sharing. And again, I appreciate your new perspective in going through both of these surveys. And I think you're going to bring a lot of great ideas going forward, and look forward to seeing what those look like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, moving on to Section 5, the future board calendar, October 15th, 2024, liaison lunch at Terra Heights with Miss Wood at 11:15. October 18th, 2024, I have a liaison lunch at Rumsey Station at 11:40. October 22nd, 2024, liaison lunch at PLHS with Mr. Bailey at 11:30. October 28th, 2024 is our next Board of Education meeting at 6 PM here at Central Office. And seeing no further business in front of the board, I adjourn the meeting at 7:09.